I think it's just complicated. I think that humanity is not complicated, though. I think that humanity should be baseline. And I think that we should see people, because if you don't see me, then it feels like you can't hear me. And if you can't hear me, then you can't save me,
Oh, that's good.
And I think that we should all feel like we are worthy of being saved.
Welcome to NICU Heroes, a podcast produced exclusively for NICU professionals, with me, Kathryn Whitaker, as your host. I'm the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby. This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit dedicated to providing free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a baby's NICU stay. As a NICU professional, you've been well trained to care for the tiniest and the sickest babies every day. While a NICU parent's scars are not as visible, those parents are often as fragile as their babies, requiring patience, guidance, and encouragement to ensure that they are mentally, emotionally, and physically prepared to endure the pressure of a NICU stay. NICU Heroes is dedicated to helping NICU professionals like you better understand, support, and nurture the entire NICU family. Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to the podcast for NICU Heroes. I gotta say, I love these conversations. One, because we have a whole hour and we get to dive deep, and that is exactly what we do today. So today we're going to focus on a couple of things. We're going to focus on how do we communicate better in the NICU. So how are you communicating with your patients? And then also there's an element, because my guest is a NICU mom. And so what are ways in which she communicated or learned to communicate as a NICU parent in the NICU? I think we have a really great, I just want to preface this by saying we have a really great conversation about the biases in which we walk into every space with, but particularly in medical spaces. And if you find yourself getting uncomfortable, that's good. Because when we get uncomfortable, we get curious. And so that is the way in which I want you to enter into this next hour, is I want you to be prepared to be uncomfortable and get excited about being curious, because I believe it will make you a better NICU professional. And I'm really grateful for the voice today of my guest. My guest today is Mia Malcolm. She began her career in healthcare and pharmacy, but then she soon pivoted into advocacy and diversity when she became more aware of the disparities in outcomes and access in minoritized communities. Mia's journey into pediatrics began almost 16 years ago, when her son Gavin was born at 24 weeks and they spent 268 days in the NICU. Her experience as a NICU mom to a former 24-week micro preemie, paired with her experience in the EDIB, that's equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging space, makes her a sought-after advisor and an advocate for many, both in and outside of the healthcare space. She's the co-author of Racism and Quality of Neonatal Intensive Care, Voices of Black Mothers, published in Pediatrics, as well as Racism as a Preventable Harm, published in Nursing Administration Quarterly. They're both great, and I'll share them in the show notes. Mia serves on several local and national committees and task forces related to elevating the voices of parents and caregivers, as well as equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Acknowledgement is a step towards equity, but acknowledgement without action is irresponsible. And that is the kind of conversation that we have today. I know that you're going to love this one, so let's get to it. I am really excited, Mia, to have you here today. I was just telling you before we started recording that I always have a list of questions, but for you, I had so many that I was like, why bother writing them down? We'll see where this goes. But I do think it's important for people to understand a little bit of the backstory. So you were just a regular person, and then you had this baby that rerouted your life. And I would love for you to share with people what that rerouting looked like and sort of how that thrust you into a new place, specifically in medical spaces, that gave you a new lens in which to see the world.
Yeah, so I was just kind of hanging out and living life. And then, like you find out that you're pregnant, and I was like, okay. I did know that it was going to be a rough pregnancy. I had 2 losses before I had Gavin. So I knew that it was going to be a long pregnancy. I did not know that I was going to have him as early as I had him. I did know that the chances of me going the full 40 weeks were going to be pretty slim, but I was thinking maybe like 36, right? 36 weeks, like here we come.
Yeah. Like early, but not too early,
Yeah,
right?
early, but not as early as he came.
Right.
And so I was not prepared for 24 weeks at all in any way, shape, or form. So it was I was going to a Waffle House. I had gotten to the point in my pregnancy where I was in the denial stage of like, oh, I need maternity clothes. I was like, well, I could just keep unbuttoning this top button and I'll be fine.
It's
It was
fine.
no longer cute. I needed maternity clothes. So I was going to go get maternity clothes. I was going to go get an Easter outfit for Shannon, for my baby girl, and it was going to be fine. And I was heading to Waffle House, and I started having pains in my like lower back area, but I thought that I was having kidney stones because I had kidney stones before. And I called my doctor and she was like, hey, just head to the hospital. It's probably just a kidney stone thing again. It's fine. We really need to talk about your water intake. I know that you drink a lot of water, but we might need to just really discuss this. I get to the hospital and you know how people don't have the best poker faces when they're like doing an exam or something. So the girl is like, I told her, I was like, hey, just so you know, I am pregnant, but I talked to my OB already and she thinks that it's kidney stones, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. But she's on her way. And the girl is like, well, we're just going to do an exam, blah, blah, blah. So she's doing it and she like looks at me and she goes, I said, well, what's wrong with your face? What's going on? And she goes,
that's not a normal reaction.
Right. She goes, you're in labor. She goes, you're 3 centimeters dilated. And I said, well, that's impossible because I'm only 24 weeks pregnant. And she was like, okay. And she just like left the room. So long story short for that piece, this is the day before Easter. So I ended up having him the next day on Easter morning. So Gavin was born 24 weeks, 5 days, Easter morning, 1 pound, 8 ounces, and thus began my 9-month-long stay in the NICU at the hospital that he was at. But outside of that, the day that he was born, he was in the hospital, and then overnight he had a massive stroke. He had the worst kind of stroke that you could have. He had a grade 4 interventricular hemorrhage. So that like in both ventricles in his brain, he was bleeding really badly. So the next morning, his attending came and he got me out of bed and he's like, hey, we need to talk. You need to come to the hospital. And I was like, okay. He goes like, no, right now. And so I called his dad. My mom was still at the hospital with me. My dad came. And so it's me, my dad, my mom, his dad, Gavin's dad, and Gavin's dad's mom. We're all sitting in this room and it's his attending, the fellow, and 2 other doctors.
The full committee. And everyone's there. Yes.
Everybody's there. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, what is going on right now? And they tell me that he had a stroke. They tell me that it is the worst kind of stroke that you can have. Well, they don't tell me that he had a stroke. They told me that he had a grade 4 IVH. I don't know what that means.
Which means absolutely nothing to you at that point.
Right? So they told me he had a grade 4 IVH and that his brain is actively bleeding, that what this means is that he will most likely be paralyzed, either para or quadriplegic, that he will likely never walk or talk, that he will not be able to run, that he will be blind or deaf, that he will never be able to live outside of the hospital, that he also has no lungs. Even though I got 2 rounds of steroids, they don't seem to have taken. And they're like, so what do you want us to do? We'll give you a second to think about it, Mom. Mom, we'll give you a second to think about it, and just walked out of the room. And I was just kind of like, I'm sorry, what? Like,
Right.
and so I'm just sitting there because I don't know what to do with it. Like, it hasn't even been 12 hours. I just had this baby
Right.
yesterday.
You're still in probably your
Like,
mind thinking, I should still be pregnant right now. And then all
yeah,
of a
like
sudden
I
I'm
could
not.
still be
And
pregnant. Like
right.
I've seen him once. I've seen him one time. Like, I didn't even have his face committed to memory.
Mhm.
That was like, it was that fast. And my dad, this is like the hardest thing. Like, my dad like got in front of me, and he like kneeled down in front of me, which, if you knew my dad, that was already a feat within itself, because my dad has the worst knees in like human history. He had the worst knees. But he kneeled down in front of me, and he like grabbed my face, and like, so I was looking at him in the face. And he was like, listen, you have to get out of that hospital. Like, you need to get out of the hospital right now. You need to get over here with your baby, because a dying little Black boy is who they experiment on, and they're going to kill your baby. Like, you got to get out that hospital now. And I could see that he was scared, and that made me scared, because he wasn't like a super emotive kind of person. Like, that just wasn't my dad's lane. And I knew that he was scared, and that made me very nervous that he was scared. And I didn't love that they didn't seem to have any hope for him.
Right.
You know what I mean? It didn't feel
Right.
like they felt like there was any hope for him. Listen, like I said, I knew that he was small. I knew that there was like, but it just didn't feel like hopeful.
Right. So Mia, let me ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
So one, where's Gavin now? So that was many years ago. Tell us how
Yeah.
old he
Well,
is
I
and
mean, he's 16. Well, he's not 16. He'll be 16 in a couple days. He'll be 16 on the 12th of next month. And he's just the sweetest kid. He is health wise, I mean, he's Gavin levels of healthy. He's had a lot. I'm not gonna say it's been an easy health journey, because it hasn't.
sure.
But he's good. He is really, really good. He still has therapies, like OT and speech therapy every week. But he will talk you underneath a table. Like, it is very like, oh, he doesn't stop doing this thing.
I like to say that that's talking that you paid big money for. When
But
our son went
listen,
through
the
so much
big
speech
bucks.
therapy, I was like, I want you to talk for the rest of your life nonstop because we paid a lot of money for
The
you to be able to do
big
that.
bucks. It's
Yes.
the big bucks. It's the breath control that we paid all the money for with the
Mhm.
lungs. It's the talking that I didn't know that he would do, because he had a trach for a while.
Right.
It's we paid a lot of money for the words. So I'm not mad at the words, and also enough of the words. Like, take a
Right.
pause,
Yes.
stop talking to me about it. He loves wrestling.
So speaking of talking, I mean, you probably found, I mean, I'm taking you back, to that moment with your dad in the
Yeah.
NICU, and then I'm seeing you today and visiting with you today. And I think sometimes our NICU babies have a way of giving us a voice that was already there, but then they find a way to magnify that because like our mama bear instinct comes out and we're
Yeah.
like, what I'm experiencing is not okay. And so we
Mm,
have to find a way to fix that, but we also have to find a
mm,
way to fix that for other families. Like
yeah.
it's not just okay for it to be better for our family, but we
Yeah.
want it to be better for other families. So, Mia, as you think about which that sounds awful, I can't believe that was your interaction with medical professionals at the beginning, that there was such an absence of hope. What did you take from that? What stirred in you to say, "Okay, so this is my reality, and then now what? What next?"
You know what? I think that the piece of like advocacy work because I had a very privileged growing up that I got to see advocacy work all around me my entire life. Both of my parents are/were social workers, so I saw advocacy work my entire life. And I always understood that advocacy work was never about me. You know what I mean? Like all of the
I do.
things that I fought for and still fight for, I don't fight for me. Cause like even when I worked inside of the healthcare system, inside of institution, that work, that change was never coming for Gavin, even when, cause he still gets treatment at that specific facility that I worked at. And I would have never gotten that for him. He's going to age out of that system before those changes would have come. So it wasn't about me because, for what? But I think that it's just really important to realize that like people just deserve access to the thing that medicine is supposed to be, right? The idea
Yes.
of first do no harm, that's a real thing. And it should be a real thing for people, regardless of what they have access to, regardless of where they come from, who they love, what they look like, all the things. And I just think that it's not just an ideal, it is just what medicine should be and can be
Right.
and is. And so, I think it's just complicated. I think that humanity is not complicated, though. I think that humanity should be baseline. And I think that we should see people because if you don't see me, then it feels like you can't hear me. And if you can't hear me, then you can't save me,
Oh, that's good.
And I think that we should all feel like we are worthy of being saved, like I just want to feel like you can see me enough to hear me and save me and want to save me. Like you want to do everything in your power to save my life, to save my baby, even if it feels bleak, because a lot of times it does feel bleak, right? It does. But shouldn't you want to do everything within your power to give that person the best outcome, even if the best outcome isn't them leaving with that baby,
Right.
but the best outcome doesn't have to be bleak. It could
Right.
still be a hopeful moment, a hopeful thing. It doesn't have to be bleak.
So when you think about, as I'm thinking about your particular situation, a 24-weeker massive stroke, brain bleeds, we're
1,000%.
not even 2 pounds, that there has to be a balance of, we have to give these parents realistic expectations, but at the
Yeah.
same time we also can't steal away whatever hope it is that
Yeah.
exists. So Mia, was there a moment when I loved the scene here and save part? So where was there a moment in that particular, you had a long stay, 9-month NICU stay, was there a moment that you can think of that you're like, man, that person really saw me, and that may have
Oh, yeah.
changed what the outcome could have been? I'm curious if you could share a little bit about what that actually looks like of being seen.
I think that, I will always give credit and props and highlight Gavin's ENT. His ENT surgeon is the love of my life. He's the most amazing human person. Gavin had like one of the scariest codes in human history the day after he came back from getting his G tube, and I say his pencil sharpened, his circumcision. We're all medical professionals. It's
It's
fine.
fine. It's fine.
But he came back from getting his G tube and his circumcision, and he got extubated, and they had been floating around the idea of him getting a trach, and I said no because there was another kid who had a very similar course to Gavin, and I was really close with his mom, and he ended up passing away. This other
Mm,
kid. And I sat with her while he passed away and all the things. And that was the only thing that I knew of a trach. And there were some conversations that probably should have been had with me around that should have been had differently and better with me that did not take place. And I did not understand the fullness of why he needed this trach, right? And so when they talked to me about the trach, I was like, nah, he's not getting the trach. My baby is not getting ready to die. And all that kept happening in my brain was the conversation my dad had had with me. And so when he came back from his procedure, he had been intubated and they took the tube out, and his airway was so narrow that the irritation from taking out his ET tube closed his airway. And so I went to the bathroom and came back from the bathroom, and I was standing in the doorway of his room. And from the minute and a half, 2 minutes that I was gone, I stood in the doorway of my room and I watched my baby's stats go from 85-ish to 0. Like like the color and like little brown baby, little beautiful brown baby went from that to, when I tell you he was gray blue, gone. Like he was done. I watched the color drain out of his body. I watched his stats crash and he was gone. And I was like, and they rushed in. I mean, little defibrillator, everything, like the worst code. And I've seen my son code at this point 1,000,000 times. And I can tell you all about I know it. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And they could not re-intubate him. Like no matter what size tube they had, they couldn't get him back. And I just remember falling against the wall and like sliding down the wall, and I was sobbing. And his ENT came in the room, and they got him back with like the same size tube that they had intubated him with day one. So when he was 1 pound, 8 ounces, my son was 7 months old on this day. Wow. He was 7 months old. His ENT came and he sat down next to me, and he positioned himself next to me, and he put my head on his shoulder, and he was like, I can do this part. He goes, Mia, I want to tell you that I'm sorry. He said, because I should have told you that this is what I was afraid for. I was afraid of this. I was afraid that if you took him home and he got sick, that this is what would happen, that you would not be able to get him back here fast enough. And I didn't want this for you. This is what I didn't want you to have to experience. And I didn't tell you that. And I am sorry. I was not a good doctor to you. I was not a good doctor to him. I was wrong. And I am sorry. He's like, and now I have to take him to surgery. I am going to make the hard decision. This is no longer your decision. You don't have to do the hard thing anymore. I'm going to do it. I'm going to save his life for you. I am going to give you your son back. But I want you to know that I'm sorry that I was a bad doctor. And at that moment, I felt like he finally saw me enough to just have the conversation that needed to be had. Just tell me, you know what I mean? Just see me enough to say, hey, I get that you're scared. I don't know what you're scared of. Tell me what you're scared of. Because something about this trach is making you uncomfortable. You're not a horrible mother. You don't want us to not do what's best for your baby. You're not a bad person. Tell me what you're afraid of. You don't want your baby to die? I don't want him to die either. Here's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of this, 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 and this. This is why I want this intervention for your child. He saw me enough to see that I was scared, and he wanted to tell me what he was afraid of. You know what I mean? Like it was that moment that he finally saw me enough to just have the conversation with me. And he apologized to me. I've never had a doctor apologize to me, because perfect people don't apologize. And that right there is the crux of what's wrong with medicine, is that we teach perfection to people, and people aren't perfect. They're just doctors.
They're just human.
They're just doctors. They're human people who went into medicine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're just human people, and they can be wrong sometimes, and that's okay. And he saw me enough to say, I was wrong, and I'm sorry, but now I need to fix this for you. And I got you. I promise you I got you.
I love that you mentioned, and I just had this conversation last month with Dr. Daigle. We were talking about this ability to be curious. You know, if you're only, I mean, they see trachs in the NICU all the time.
all
But
the
if you
time.
but if it's your first trach and your only experience is with a family who lost their baby, that's your frame of reference. So
Yeah,
I love that he mentioned that, like, I should have been curious enough to ask, what
yeah.
was your reservation? And then we could have talked through that.
And we could have talked through.
Right.
Yeah,
I had a similar conversation with a doctor. We were getting ready to have a surgery that ended up saving our son's life, but I didn't know how serious it was
yeah,
until I got them isolated and was like, "Can someone please explain this to me?" So
yeah.
I think that you bring up a good point, and that particularly for the NICU professionals that are listening to this, if there's resistance or a misunderstanding, like finding out the why, so that
Yeah.
then you can address whether it's the concerns, it's their scope of reference. Maybe they're worried about a lot of other things that, while they affect their NICU stay, you may not necessarily see. Maybe they're struggling with food insecurity, or they may not have a job, or they may not have support at home, and they're worried about what this thing that may happen is going to affect all of those things. So there's so many things at play just besides what's happening in that hospital in medicine.
There was a girl that I used to work with when I worked at the hospital, and she would always say, "It's never about what it's about."
Yeah, so true.
And people would always think, like, you always think it's about the thing that you think it's about, but 9 times out of 10, it's never about the thing that you think that it's about. Like, it wasn't about like, there was this narrative that was floating around that I just didn't want the trach because I didn't want Gavin to have a big surgery. Y'all could have put a hole in his head if it meant saving. If it
Right.
meant that I was going to get to take my baby home and get up out that hospital, do what you need to do. I don't care. I didn't want him to die.
Right.
I wanted to take my baby home. And in my mind, trach meant that he was going to die because, to your point, it was the only frame of reference I had.
Right.
And no one thought enough of me to ask me what I was afraid of. That's what it felt like to me.
Right.
That's
I mean,
so
and
hard.
it's so valid, and it happens to so many families. I know that you've written and you've spoken a lot about this diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in medicine. I mean, certainly in the world, but particularly in medicine. I know that Gavin's experience probably gave you a new lens for all of that. So you co-authored this article. So Mia, I
Mhm.
want you to share with people what the basis for that article was, and then what you were hoping to uncover, and then what you were hoping to implement to change what it is that you found.
Yeah, I think the article that Rachel and I did on amplifying the voices of Black mothers and talking about how racism impacts the quality of care in the NICU was really, it started because Rachel and I had the conversation about my experience and the conversation that me and my dad had. But I think that for me, that kind of old thing about, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. I think that a lot of times in medical spaces, we are not aware of the history of medicine, right? And
Right.
the fact that there is a historical piece of anti-Black racism that is embedded in medicine, that is founded on in medicine. And because we don't know it, and because we're not aware of it, and because we don't acknowledge it, we are doomed to repeat these things, these anti-Black racist tropes that like plague us, these biases that are baked into the medicine. And it harms our babies. It harms their outcomes. There's this, this thing that like floats around of there's this one thing that was said, and it actually came up. One of the moms said it during our study, this wimpy white boy thing. And it was said to me, like, because Gavin was having this day where I was actually said this in one of my talks, like he was like having a Brady field day. He was Tom Brady. He was like having the most Bradys that anybody could have. Like he was the
And
king.
only people in the NICU understand exactly
You
what you're talking about.
listen,
So thank you. Yes.
it was Brady. He was that guy. And I was
Yeah.
like, no one is coming in this room. What is happening? And so the resident or fellow came in finally, and I was like, yo, like what is happening today? And they were like, well, I said, his nurse isn't coming in here. He keeps having these episodes. What is going on? And he was like, well, his nurse is over there with the other baby. She's over there with the wimpy white boy. They need extra love and attention because Gavin's a strong boy. Our Black babies do so well. There's this hierarchy in the NICU. It's the Black girls they do so, how strong Black girls are. And I was like, oh, what? And he's like, the Black girls do well. And then it's like right underneath them are the Black boys. And then you have white girls. And then these wimpy white boys, they just need so much love and attention. We have to give them the extras. So for me, this idea that we don't have to put anything extra into our Black babies when the actual outcomes show that Black babies have the highest morbidity and mortality rates. That's what the evidence shows.
Right.
But you're telling me that you intentionally are showing more time and love and attention to these other babies. Why? Where's what? Where's the evidence of any, that doesn't make any sense, right? It feels like there's an unconscious bias of the medicine for some reason, and it doesn't, the math doesn't math anywhere. But you're telling me that you're doing a thing, and I'm sitting here looking at my son who's struggling, and you're not coming in to help him because you've made up in your brain that he's going to figure it out because he's strong. He'll figure it out. Who told you that? Because I'm watching him not be able to figure it out. I'm watching him struggle. I'm watching him do a thing. I'm watching him not be able to figure it out. And you're telling me, it's okay. It's all right. He'll get there. Right? So there are all of these kind of weird things that we do and we say. And so I just think that for us, we wanted to understand, what are the experiences that Black families, that Black moms, Black families are having that feel, right? Because perception is reality, but also reality is reality, that can help us shine a light on how we need to fix our practices and better our medicine. And I think through our study, what we were able to ascertain is that, the data is what the data is, but that data has names and that data has stories that are attached. And that data shows that Black babies are 3 to 4 times more likely to die than our white babies. And it is because our biases are being allowed to permeate the medicine. And we have to fix that. We have to be willing to step back and acknowledge that, when I'm walking into this space, my affinity biases are allowing me to treat this family differently because I don't see myself in this room. When I look at that baby, I don't see my niece or my nephew or my son or my daughter or my neighbor. I don't see myself in that room. So I'm coming into that space maybe a little bit more guarded. Maybe I'm coming into that space thinking that mother doesn't care about that baby the same way that mother does. Or maybe I'm coming into that space they don't have access to the same resources, so they're not going to be able to provide the same care. Maybe I'm coming into that space with certain assumptions about, whatever the thing is, right? People came into my room thinking certain things about me and then changed their tune when they found out that I was in pharmacy school, right? I was deemed to be a certain level of intelligence until they found out certain things about me. Right? And they're like, oh, wait, you did that? Why is it surprising to you that I'm in higher education like that? Right? Or there would be people who would, every time somebody saw my dad, they were flabbergasted. They're like, wait, that's your dad? How surprised are you when you see white people's dads coming in to visit them? Why are you surprised that I know who my dad is? Every single time. Every time Gavin's dad was there every single day. And every single day there was somebody who was surprised that Gavin's dad was there. For 268 days, there is mention of me in Gavin's chart. There is no mention of Gavin's father in his chart anywhere.
And I would say I mean, I like to say that there was a note in my chart that I was one of those moms because I was always asking questions. But I think you're right. I don't think men, and certainly men of color, are probably not mentioned in charts very often because it's always about the mom or the female caregiver that's taking care of that baby.
When I ask certain questions, there are so many things about how I was aggressive. There are things about me I was there every day except for 10 days when I actually ended up getting strep throat and got really sick and got admitted to the hospital or joined.
So you were still in the hospital.
I was in the hospital. I just
You're still
wasn't
in the
in that
hospital.
hospital,
Right.
but I was absent
Oh, man.
and neglected him because I got admitted to the hospital. Right? It's the language that we use to talk about people and to talk about people's babies that is different when different things, right? Those are things that we have to be cognizant of, right? And that's unconscious, our biases are sometimes, but those things don't leave people. Those are stories that families can't outrun, right? Those are stories that trigger other things, right? That make it more likely that when that child, because the NICU is the foundation for the book of medicine for a lot of families. So if that baby gets readmitted in the pediatric ICU or in the neuro ICU or has to come back for therapies, those are things that can help trigger, right, a DCFS call for somebody because they're like, oh, well, this has been a pattern of behavior. It hasn't been. That baby hasn't been aggressive since they were a neonate.
Right.
What kind of aggressive neonate have you ever met? That's not a thing. Right? And so we have to be cognizant of language that we use to talk about people and where that comes from. Where does it come from that you assume that I'm aggressive or I'm questioning you instead of asking you questions? But if I'm asking the same questions that you're asking, why is it perceived different if I'm doing it than if you're doing it? Where does that come from? Right? So those are the things that I think that we have to think about. And I think it's important to hear people's experiences.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's one thing if I'm telling you that this is how people are feeling, and it's a different thing if someone is like, this is Mia's experience, but this is also this person's experience, and this is also this person's experience. And it's a pattern of behavior that we have to be willing to address and listen to people when they tell us their experiences of our behaviors if we want to change the thing.
So Mia, if there's a NICU professional that's listening to this and is maybe re-examining conversations that they've had or maybe inherent bias that they adopted and they just took it as it is fact when it may not have been fact, how or what questions would you encourage them to ask? What conversations would you encourage them to have? What glasses would you encourage them to take off to be a better NICU professional to that family and a better NICU professional to that baby? This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Hand to Hold is here to support your NICU in two ways. One, you can refer your NICU parents to us for support, or two, you can bring dedicated Hand to Hold support to your NICU, either in person or virtually. Our support consists of one-to-one group and educational resources, including our family-focused podcast, NICU Babies Parent Support. For more information, visit handtohold.org and click on NICU Professionals.
Well, first of all, I would always encourage people to examine the why. If you are willing to examine the why, then you are willing to change your behavior. That's first and foremost. I would also examine your listening practice. I think that as healthcare professionals, the biggest reason for friction that we have with families is because we don't listen fully. I think that we hear people.
Yeah, I was going to say listening and hearing, two different things.
Listening and hearing are two different things. I think that we hear people. I think that listening is hard because listening requires us to believe people when two things are true, right? When their experiences don't line up with our experiences, which is tough, right? So oftentimes our patient population is not experiencing the world the same way that we experience the world. And so that creates some sort of dissonance in our mind of like, well, that can't be real. That's not.
Right, because that's not my experience.
Because that's not my experience. Well, welcome to the world, right?
Right.
And then also, when their experience of us is not in alignment with how we want people to experience us or how we have been told that people experience us, right? Because again, we are socialized in medicine to this idea of perfection. And we have to learn how to divorce ourselves from that thing. Because if I tell you, Kathryn, if you're my doctor and I'm like, I think that you're really mean and you're really cold when you come in here. Like, you're just cold and you're mean to me. And I'm trying to tell you how I'm feeling and you just feel very standoffish. And you're like, no, I'm not. Okay, so you're not listening. Right? You didn't hear anything that I just said. So you have to be willing to listen even when it's hard, even when what I'm telling you about you don't want to hear and it doesn't feel real for you. You have to be willing to listen to people's experiences, even when it does not align with your views of you and it makes it hard for you to sit in the truth.
Right. So my response could be.
So your response could be
what?
I am so sorry. I am so sorry that you are experiencing me that way because it is not my intention to come off as cold or standoffish to you. Tell me what I can be doing different to create a space for you where you feel like you can share with me or whatever that person needs from you in that moment. Tell me what I can be doing differently. Do you need me to sit when I'm talking to you? Like, because a lot of times we come in and we're sitting there like this.
Right.
There is nothing inviting about this. I don't want to talk to you if you're sitting there like this.
If you're sitting there with your arms crossed,
Because
absolutely
this feels
not.
like you got 10 minutes, but 3.5
minutes.
You got 3 good minutes, right? So tell me what you need. Tell me what you need. How can I support you differently?
Yeah,
right?
as you talk about this this perfection model, particularly in medicine, right? Because when we get it wrong, it can go really wrong and someone could not walk out of the NICU because of our imperfection. So this desire to be perfect, particularly in medicine, I can at least understand the why part, but I think that the inability to maybe reconnect with the humanity part is where we lose this connection with our patients and their families.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think, Mia, when it comes to perfection of a particular specialty? Maybe a specialist comes in and they're really good at what they do. How do you help them continue to strive for excellence in their particular specialty, but not forget about the humanity of the person that they're serving?
Well, I think that like the specialty part, right? Because to that example, right? Like being a surgeon, right? And you having great surgical skills is one thing, right? And have amazing surgical skills. But when you're coming to talk to a person, I am not a stitch. I'm not in the OR, right? You're not in the OR with me.
Yeah.
We are no longer in the OR. the same way that when you go home to talk to your family, you're with your family, you are no longer at work, right? I'm not that part of your job. I think you have to be able to like separate these two things out.
Yeah.
Right? Because I need a different thing from you. I need something else from you. I am not requiring that part from you. Because what you are doing in that OR and what you are doing for me are two very, very different things. I don't require your surgical technique. I require your humanity because you are not. What you're doing in that OR is about your patient. What you're coming to talk to me about is my child.
Mm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
That's good. Yes,
And
I do.
those are two very different people.
Right.
I don't want to know about your patient. I need you to be in a very focused place about your patient in that OR.
Right.
I need you to come and talk to me about my child. How is my child? Is my child safe? Is my child okay? Because your patient might be patient number 7235. That I don't know that person. Talk to me about Gavin. Is Gavin okay? Did Gavin make it? What's the outcome for Gavin? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like those are for me, those are different people. Like I know that doesn't feel different to you all as clinicians, it might not feel, it is different.
I had a nurse say one time, she said, because I was asking her, I was saying, how does it not become just robotic? Because you see babies critically all the time. And she said, I remind my nurses all the time that the patients that they're serving are somebody's hopes and dreams. And she said, and those
Period.
hopes and dreams are different for every family, but it's still somebody's hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And I think that you said it, is that you have to find a way to be excellent in the thing in which you've been trained to do, but when
Yes.
it comes to the interaction of the humanity, that we can't forget our own, and that we have to allow that which is the best part of who we are, right?
Yeah.
Because our nurses who are with us, our respiratory therapists and all the others that are there, the specialists, the doctors, the charge nurses, it's their humanity that makes them so good at what they do, not how well they performed in medical school or in
Yep.
nursing school,
Yep.
because that's the part that you and I, as the NICU mom, remember of feeling seen, knowing that someone is going to save our baby at the end. So I actually think that makes them the very best part of who they are,
Yep.
and not just this perfection excellence part, but who are you as a human, and let us see that, because it helps us trust you.
Yeah. Like Gavin had a RT, he had a respiratory therapist. And I mean, I honestly think it was the reason that he would pull his ET tube out all the time is because I think that he was in love with her.
He wanted all of her. So he
He
was like
needed all of her attention all the time.
he
It
was
was
like a teenage boy trying to get somebody's
if
attention,
she was
yes?
within like 10 feet, he was like, oh, there she is. But whenever if he pulled that tube out, or if she was come by and she's like, hey, I got you today. If you need anything, I'm right here. Okay. You good? Because I got you and I got him. She didn't have to do that, but she
Right,
always would let me know, like, hey, I got you and I got him today. Like, you don't need to be stressed out. You don't need to worry about anything. I am here. I got y'all. And if she came in and she had to adjust his tube, if she had to put it back, she came in, she did the thing that she knew how to do
mhm,
better than anybody on the planet. And she would always look at me and say, hey, he's good. He's good. You go look at him. Go look at his face. He's good. That's humanity. That's seeing a person. That's being a human being and still being excellent at the thing that she knows how to do better
right,
than anybody because she understood that her patient, the person that she just did the thing that she knows how to do, is still somebody to me. We just have to be cognizant of the duality of the moment that we live in.
Right.
We exist inside of healthcare in a very important duality. There is just, it's not black and white. It is a million gazillion colorful things, and all of those colors mean the world to the people who are sitting in that space, and like, you hold our hopes and our dreams in your hand. Like, you hold them. And I know that that feels heavy, but I promise you that you trained for it.
When it comes to really good, I think, hallmarks of communication, whether that's between a family member and a specialist or a family member and some other NICU professional, what are two or three like really good hallmarks of good communication, whether the conversation is easy to have or hard to have? What do you think are some good places to start?
There's a difference between honesty and transparency. I think that people, I am a person that prefers transparency, right? Transparency means that you are going to come in and be like, hey, here are the things this is what we got. We got this, we got this, we got this, we got this. These are the plans for today. If those plans change, I will let you know. If I can't let you know, this is the plan for that, right? Honesty is like, well, if you ask me, I'll be honest with you, but you have to initiate the conversation. You have to initiate, right? Honesty means that I have to be the one who like ask a question and you're going to tell me the truth about it. But I have to be the one. I can't be the one.
Right. You don't have
right?
enough. You don't have enough bandwidth for that.
I don't have the bandwidth or the information.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have the bandwidth or the information. Transparency, especially, and I'm in active trauma, right? Like, let's keep it a buck. In the NICU space, I am in active trauma. I don't have it. Right. And so I think that in that space, I think that transparency has to be the hallmark for communication, because you all hold the majority of the keys.
Yeah, until we've been to NICU school for a few months, we don't know what questions to ask. We're still learning acronyms.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt like I could give a tour to all the new people as they showed up, at the end of our stay, but at the beginning of our stay, it felt like I had just entered into.
Yeah, like at the beginning, you're swimming and drowning, and you're mostly just drowning, and you're like trying to like blow bubbles through a cocktail straw. Like, you're like, I don't know where I am.
Yeah.
But I also think that one of the things that would be so amazing is that when you first come to the NICU, if there was a thing for people to understand how you need to communicate. Like, how does communication need to happen for you and with you, right? Because everybody doesn't need the same types of communication or doesn't need the same thing in order to feel seen, heard, and valued, or in order to have good communication. Like, one of the other things that Gavin's ENT did for me was that he asked me, like, if I need to have a hard conversation with you, or if we need to have, one of those types of talks, what do you need? Like, do you want it to just be me and you? Do you need your mom here? Do you need his dad? Like, do you need somebody else in the room? Do you want it to be me, you, and that person? What does that need to look like for you?
Wow. What a specialist.
Yeah, I was like, maybe like me and my mom, because I don't know if his dad is going to be able to get here, but I know my mama can be here. And he was like, all right, cool. And so, like, if he needed to tell me something, he would come down and he'd be like, hey. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, call your mom and tell somebody to page me when she gets here. And I'm like, okay. And that way I knew, like, oh, we got to have a talk.
Right.
But he, again, saw me enough to say, this is what she needs, because we got to talk. And I'm not just getting ready to go in here and like unload on her, and she's not prepared to hold whatever I got to give her.
Right.
And I don't think we do that enough. And then we're sitting there confused about why don't you get it? I told you 3 times. I've talked to this person about this. Did you? Did you talk to them about it? Because you didn't give them what they needed in order to be able to receive it.
Right. And not only the receiving part, but I mean, when you make decisions, and many of them are life and death decisions, that if you haven't received the information in which to make the very best decision, it just adds more trauma and becomes more difficult.
Exactly.
I do love that suggestion that you had, that opening to say, when you come into the NICU, not everybody knows, how do you speak to your nurse? If something happens with your baby, where do you go? If you have a question about this, because while it seems rote to the people that work in the NICU, when you are the one who's brand new to the NICU, you don't, one, know the chain of command, but you also don't know, how do I communicate this thing that feels really scary and terrible to me, but feels very normal and average to them? Like, how do we have a better conversation? And then when we have that, how am I in a place to receive the information that I get back? That is really, really good. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. So if someone walks into the NICU, Mia, and maybe is not as self-aware and doesn't know where to start, what would you suggest to the patient who feels like they need to have a better conversation? And what would you suggest to the NICU professional who needs to share that information with them? What can they do differently? What can they do better to get the scenario that they need and then to be able to receive what they get?
I think that like when you walk in, that first like 24, 48 hours is a wash, right? But
Right.
I think that like, 3 days in, whatever, like that first nurse or whoever that you sit down with, I think just having a conversation about like, listen, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? So
Right.
like while you're here, you're gonna have like a lot of talks with a lot of people. When you have to have a big talk, right? If we have to sit you down and like have a talk about your baby's condition, or if it's, one of those long days and we got to talk to a specialist about something, what do you need? Do you want a social worker? How do you feel about social work? Is that a scary word for you? Do you want a nurse to always be with you? Do you have a support system? Is your mom your person? Can your mom get here? Right? I just think that we need to be more understanding and flexible about what people need in
Right.
our space. I think that there is this idea that the NICU is not the ER. The ER, the ED, whatever you call it, the emergency room, when you think of the emergency room, you automatically think trauma, right? Because traumas happen there. There's a trauma bay, there's like ambulances that you think trauma when you think of the emergency room. And for some reason, we think that like that's not the NICU. The NICU is a trauma space.
24/7.
And I'm going to use my I voice because I don't want to put my stuff on other people. For me, the NICU was not just a trauma space, but I was the trauma. I could not get out of it.
Mhm.
I was the trauma that was actively happening all the time. Like it was me, it was my body, it was my baby, it was my baby because of my body. I was the trauma and I could not get out of it. And so all the time I was in trauma because every time somebody told me that Gavin could not do a thing or that he had failed a thing or that something was wrong, I was like in a shame spiral. I was mad at myself. I was mad at my baby. I was mad. I was angry. I was hurt. I was sad. All the time. All the time. And so we have to just be aware that people need things in order to function in that space. And on top of that, now y'all need to come and tell me something horrible. And you need me to make a life and death decision about my baby.
We're going to give you just a minute to think about it. Yes.
Take
Yes.
a second to think
Take a
about
second. Yeah. Take a second. Yeah.
by yourself in
Hmm.
isolation. I was in
Yes.
solitary confinement for 268 days. I was in
Yeah.
solitary confinement. making life and death decisions. And nobody, like one person, one human person thought enough to be like, hey, might you need something while you're in there thinking about these things?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So I think like figuring out a process, I think that every NICU should figure out a process when families come in to say, okay, this is let's just be upfront. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. If you are here for a week, if you are here for 9 months, if you are here for a year, if you're here for 2 months, whatever amount of time, this is not a sprint. If you're here for a week, it is going to be the longest week of your life. What do you need in order to feel supported throughout this week? If I got to talk to you about feeding and what feeding might look like, because everybody thinks, oh, feeding, you're good. Feeding is not, this is not like boob in your mouth, you're good, get out. That's not what feeding is in the NICU. Feeding can be traumatizing. What do you need? Are you a pictures and words kind of person? Like, what do you need? Do you need a handout? What do you need? You let families know that you are the priority. We got to get you what you need because this baby got to go home with you. We not coming with you. So what do you need?
Yeah.
The goal is to make sure that you feel supported, that you understand what we have to tell you, that you are able to process it in a way that feels good to you. So that our nurses can do what they need to do and they don't have to come in here 67 times. Because the reason a lot of times that we're spending 6 and 7 and 8 times telling somebody the same thing over and over is because we didn't do it right the first time for what that person needed.
Right.
The reason you had to tell me that 16 times is because when you did it the first time, I wasn't listening because I wasn't tapped in.
Yeah.
Because you just came in here while I was like, what? Hey, by the way, we need you to. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it's a lot.
You know what I mean? So I think if we did it on the front end, if we were proactive on the front end, the reactive thing, right? We wouldn't be playing catch up on the back end all the time.
And I think that your point too is that sometimes when we see a trauma unfolding in front of us and we've experienced trauma, we go back to the way that we processed ours. And so we see someone and we're like, okay, so that's my lens. And then when they don't react the way that we did, we're like, well, what's wrong with them? Forgetting that everybody reacts differently and that just because your experience was your experience, that just means that your experience was your experience.
Which goes back to the listening piece.
Right.
You gotta be willing you gotta be willing to accept, right?
Yes.
That was just your experience. I think it's really important to normalize the word trauma. And I think it's really important to stop using the word baggage immediately. Like, I think that everyone underneath the sound of my voice should remove the word baggage from their vocabulary as it pertains to people's trauma, especially in these spaces like today for the rest of their lives, because it is dismissive and it is hurtful. If I got to pack my bags around my trauma, I would not have packed it around my child. That is not a bag that I would have packed.
Correct.
Wouldn't have done it.
I would have sent that one back for a refund.
I would not have done it. That boy is, my kids are the loves of my life. They are the loves of my life, and I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it to them, and I would not have done it to myself. Yeah. That is not a bag that I would have packed. So I just think that we have to stop speaking that onto people because it's not fair and it's not nice. It's just, and it's not right. It's trauma and it sucks. It's okay if it makes you uncomfortable that I have trauma, but discomfort is a part of life. It's all right.
Yes.
We're all grown-ups.
Well, I'm really grateful, Mia, that you shared and that you were so transparent and vulnerable in sharing your own trauma, because I know it's not easy to relive those very difficult days with our babies and certainly with other family members. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, because I think it helps when people can share bits and pieces of how trauma affected them, then it helps us serve them better. It helps us listen to them better. It helps us love them better. And it helps us to be more curious about how we can be the best, not just perfectional, this kind of idea of perfection, but that we get to integrate the things that we are really skilled at, but the things
Yeah.
that make us who we are to serve our patients and our families even better. So I'm grateful that you shared ways in which we can communicate better, but also where that good communication came from. And that came from a deep place of trauma. But I know that it hasn't just stayed that trauma. I know that you've really helped a lot of people heal from that, probably yourself, but other people, and how do we love and serve our families and our patients better. So thank you for such good advice and for being so transparent. It was awesome. Thanks, y'all, so much for listening. That was a fantastic conversation. I hope that you'll do me a favor. If you love today's episode, please share it with a friend. You can also review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. You can also give us a listen and a watch over on YouTube. It's how we reach more NICU professionals. Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Reckitt Mead Johnson, whose mission is to nourish the world's children for the best start in life. For more than a century, they have led the way in developing safe, high-quality, innovative nutrition products and continue to push the boundaries of nutritional knowledge with consistent, strong investments in scientific exploration.